So we actually have a variety of programs for the Esports Association. One is career readiness. So we actually work with the Career Center here to better prepare our association members to learn those life skills that they are going to need so that when they make that transition over to a career pathway.
Awesome, awesome. This guy, we gotta turn around. This guy wins almost every tournament we throw. I'm telling you. You gotta watch him live. He's gonna be something big.
CSUDH Esports Association is centered in 4 domains: academics and research, community engagement, competition, and entertainment.
We're trying to make sure that the students are prepared for the future, that they understand the diversity that media offers now, and again, look beyond the traditional outlets.
They can gain fieldwork, partnerships, as well as potential job opportunities, and in both the higher education and K-12 fields.
We believe that esports is a strategy and not an outcome. Our association is here to help anyone that is willing to learn how to take your gaming skills to the next level through a supporting community. If you are looking to showcase your production talents to help support our esports teams, then this is the association for you. We host online and on-site tournaments that will allow our members to showcase their competitive spirit. Our association broadcasts out our competition and practices to entertain our community as well as our global audience. We believe that by joining us, you will come out of the association feeling transformed and better prepared to transfer your skills into your career. Join today and begin to explore endless opportunities through our Esports Association here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another esports talk session. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to actually bring you a very, very special guest with us. But before I introduce our special guest, just a quick announcement, and that is to thank you all for tuning in, for following our social platforms, for giving us a like, a follow, leaving feedback and comments. All of that helps us thrive as we continue the programming. All right, without any further ado, we have Mitch Reams with us today, and he will be talking about career opportunities in esports. Mitch, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So, Mitch, if we could just dive right into it, if you could please share with us sort of your background and how did you get started in this esports space that we're in today?
Yeah, my background was in sports broadcasting. Always been a gamer, of course. I was studying sports broadcasting at the University of Oregon in 2016 was my senior year. And during that year, I was also competing in quite a few college leagues. I was playing TESPA Hearthstone. I was playing some collegiate Rocket League just a year after Rocket League had come out. And there was some very like grassroots kind of stuff there. And I remember going through the massive list. Of course, I'd seen esports, but as I was in the college world, just going through this list of all the different teams and all the different schools and seeing how many students were playing at that time, to me, it was like a kind of a wake up moment. Like, oh wow, I really need to get into this. And with my background in sports and then esports, it seemed like a pretty natural fit. Normally, the career trajectory for a sports reporter is to go cover small town newspaper, small town broadcast, covering high school football, high school basketball, something like that. And that just didn't really appeal to me as much. And the esports world was calling my name. So I decided, much to my parents' chagrin, to be like, yeah, I'm going to go write about video games freelance. And they're like, what? But that was what I did. I gave myself a timeline of 6 months after graduating. If I had some forward momentum, if not, I was going to go get a job at some small town broadcast thing. And so coming out of school, I took a little bit of a break, and then I started just trying to figure out what first steps look like. I actually found a Reddit post looking for Hearthstone writers. That was the very first thing I did. They paid me $5 to write up patch notes. Auspicious start, really great, great start there,
Yep.
and that sort of evolved over time. Took those articles to another publication called Action Esports. They actually
Mm.
pivoted into video and got a content broadcast deal with the Overwatch League. Good for them. But back then, we were just doing random gaming content, and just sort of snowballed into, $5 became $15 an article, which became $25 an article, which became $50, which became a quota of an actual salary. And so,
Nice.
6 months to a year after graduating, finally got my first. I cobbled together enough freelance contracts that I was making what I considered a livable wage. And so
Right.
it took a little while, and there's still quite a bit of instability, especially in esports media.
Mm.
But basically, just I enjoyed freelancing because it allowed me to get a lot of expertise and to have a
Right.
lot of the freedom to, oh, okay, I want to go do this now. Oh, okay, I'm going to try podcasting.
Right.
And that's evolved to now being a writer who covers esports for the mainstream publications. I noticed that they didn't understand esports, and you could see that in a lot of their writing. So
Right.
instead of just lambasting them on social media, I also started pitching them articles, quite receptive. And so now I've published a lot of articles for Adweek covering the advertising and marketing world around esports, which is a very fascinating space. I've published an article for the Washington Post. I published one for Verge, and then for a whole wide variety of gaming publications: Hotspot, Esports Insider, Dexerto. Take your pick. My name's probably on there somewhere. Uh,
Very cool, Mitch. Gosh, thank you for sharing. And when you were pursuing this, it sounded like this was post graduation. Um, did you get yourself more involved? I mean, did you get yourself, excuse me, involved during your time in higher ed, or were you just
only,
clearly navigating the waters right after?
Well, it's crazy how much it's evolved in higher ed from that
Right.
2016 range. That was when the very first, I think that's when UCI created their varsity program. And it was like, oh, okay, some colleges are talking about this. I was playing TESPA out of my friend's dorm room. Like, it was just, there was no infrastructure. And I went back
Yeah.
to the University of Oregon last February before everything shut down. And they have an esports lounge with all these super high end computers. They had this whole seminar where they brought in Evil Geniuses and Team Liquid to talk about things.
Mm.
Uh, and the program I was most deeply involved in, which was called Duck TV, which was our student run TV show.
Yeah.
And I was the producer of Duck TV Sports, so one of the people in charge of creating the show for Duck TV Sports. Well,
Mm.
when I went back there, they had Duck TV Esports, and they were doing shout casting for all the different University of Esports or University of Oregon esports matches, and all this, and like basically giving people a crash course that this is what esports is, this is what esports broadcasting looks like. And when I was there, that's none of that existed.
Wow.
And so, I would have been had I been in school, but at the time, it was I knocked on a
So
couple doors, was like, "Hey, what about esports?" They're like, "What?" We don't care. And that's changed a lot. So
right.
yes, so short answer, yes, I would have been had it existed.
Got it. Got it. And I'm glad that you share that with us, mainly because, the student activities, the organizations that get formed within, higher ed, those become very impactful in what it is that students are dabbling in their interest in space. And so, like you said, had it been there, you would have jumped all over that. I'm thinking too of how many other people would have jumped all over that.
Right.
And use that as a platform to help them elevate what it is that they want to do in their career. And yeah, I mean, for you to go out there still pursuing your passion, and like you said, I love the story that you just shared. It was on a Reddit post.
Yeah.
It started
Of
with
course.
Reddit, and it evolved, and you worked your way up, which is really neat. Excellent. So, I think you've shared a little bit about like what motivates you, but is there anything else that you would want to add to what motivates you?
Yeah, I think what's really great, especially about journalism in esports, is how much impact your work
Mm.
has, because it's a rapidly changing space
Right.
that has some bad actors involved. Of course, so, there's drama, there's controversy, and there isn't the same like journalistic monoliths that we have
Right.
in the sports world, who are already holding power to account and like who know everybody and see all of this. And esports, there's a real need for good quality journalism and cutting through BS. I don't know if I can cuss. I will cuss.
No. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being
But
real with what it is, and I like what you said, holding power accountable. Well said. And based off the experience that you have, I mean, coming into, hey, I can now write about it because yes, you were a former TESPA player, or competed in TESPA, and being able to write about it, I'm sure it comes in handy with your journalism pieces that you publish.
it definitely helps to be a gamer. I don't think it's requirement. Like I've had to cover a lot of games that I haven't played. I just did a podcast on Race to World First and World of Warcraft, and
Yep.
not one of the games. I played RuneScape growing up, so
Yeah.
that's just me personally.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn that stuff, but it helps to be a gamer and to understand, hey, this is what Warcraft is. This is why I understand it, and that's what a lot of the publications who had previously been covering esports didn't have. They didn't have a basis of knowledge of like, this is why people play video games. This is why people watch esports. It's not like, well, all these people are watching games, crazy. It's like, why? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's reasons. Like you can have reasons, and let's get beyond the general level of this is happening crazy.
Right.
And that's where esports media was and still is at times at like the 2017 2018 range whenever it appeared in a mainstream publication. But then you see places like Launcher from Washington Post pop up, and it's like, oh, Washington Post video game journalism, this is all dedicated towards gaming. And it's crazy to see how far it's come that these are now verticals that
Right.
major publications see the need to cover, and that just wasn't the case a few years ago.
Yeah, see, and I love that you drove those connections or connected those dots, when you mentioned like, hey, we need more, journalism, and especially to hold power accountable, and the fact that if we get more serious writers out there, organizations like the Wall Street Journal, what have you, would essentially see that because it is a thing, like you said, it's people like to culminate in that space and not just feature what it is that you see in the interface, but going beyond that, that makes it such a spectacle to watch and to appreciate too. So yeah, it takes more, serious journalism, if you will, and good practices, I'm sure. So if you don't mind, if we can segue into that, like, what is it that you're looking for when you're starting a piece, if you will?
Oh, that's a really good question. For me, I really enjoy my long form features and different talking about different issues. So there's a lot of people who like are breaking news or talking to sources, are fact, and those people are incredibly important. My friend Adam Fitch over at now at Dexerto, previously at Esports Insider,
Mhm.
great guy. He does a great job of that. He just the people over at Esports Observer, Kevin Hitt, some of the other people they have over there do a really great job at that. And me personally, I'm more of like, I want to cover a topic, a feature. So one of my favorite features from this last year was on gaming chairs, and
Ah.
specifically how they aren't great for you, posture and performance wise. You can see my posture is bad. Now this respawn, not talking about you guys. You guys are great. You guys are great. This chair is great. Get my plug.
No bias there. No bias
Shout
there.
out to Alex. He's great. Um, no, but there's and there's quite a few brands, and those brands aren't super stoked with me because I wrote this whole profile as Esports Insider's most viewed piece for about 3 months back in spring until Adam Fitch broke some other massive news. Basically, I was talking to a doctor and talking to uh, a caster who'd been in these chairs for a long time, and so the flared seats are really bad for your posture.
Mm.
They're kind of shaky made, and they're really just relying on marketing for a long time. And it was sort of around Complexity's Herman Miller partnership too, and these leaders in ergonomics. And that's the kind of story that I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that, hey, gamers might not realize. We might all be having like, wow, my back doesn't feel great in this gaming chair. I don't know why. These chairs are really expensive. They're supposed to be really nice.
Right.
Well, they might not be designed for that. And if we could talk about some of the people who could talk to these chairs, talk about that, and then that's viewed and that's disseminated, that to me makes a difference because it also forces these chairs companies to care more about ergonomics. To they need to now see this and learn about this and do better. And
Right.
if that information is out there, then I think it helps create a better ecosystem as a whole, as we have less bad chairs in general. It's a small thing, but
Yeah,
like that's what one story could do. It talks about a gaming chair and like these aren't great and these aren't great for these reasons. And then Respawn, like this one, releases this office chair. It does not have flared edges, like you can see. I'm not saying my article created that or anything, but it highlights that there's improvements to be made, and these companies can make these improvements if it's being talked about more.
Right. Well, gosh, well shared and well said. Like you said, I took that away immediately. Holding power accountable, and then having that, unison commitment with the community to say, look, this is going to help. We obviously want to help, and if we can inform to get ourselves well educated, and so that we can be longer lasting, let's say, pursuers of the gaming industry, or what it is that we like to do in the space, then so be it. Let's talk about it. It's dialogue. Let's write about it. How cool! Thank you for sharing that, and we'll definitely have to take a look at the article and share it with our community. And so and then take me a step further. So then once you're in that developing stage, you basically have now composed your article and you're ready for publishing. What is it that you're looking for in how you're going to outreach to your community? What is it that you have found to be the best practice?
Oh, that's a really good question. Social media is a pain in the ass. uh, I I basically just tweet my articles out, and that's why I enjoy working for a publication. A lot of freelancers are really like, uh, they do their own. Like you see a lot of people just constantly on Twitter, constantly, and that's great. Like that's awesome. It's not me. So I really enjoy working for publications that do a lot of that outreach naturally. I think it takes a really skilled person, and Esports Insider was great about that. Places like launcher at Washington Post, they do a really good job of disseminating their article. But once it gets out there, the goal is just get more people to read it. And a lot of that's through social media, but social media is a really tough nut to crack, and it's not my favorite thing. So I like to create the content of like, hey, now you guys distribute, get this out wherever you can. I should be better on social media, but it hurts my brain.
And it's good to know. I mean, again, another intersection. It's like this is where, those that are in the social spaces more so, and get to, I don't know, determine the pulse of what it is that people are clicking through, how to match that and pair that so that it can work into another synergistic point. And you mentioned, again, career opportunities. What is it that you've seen in esports that has grown exponentially, especially after your time of college?
Yeah, I mean, that's social media managing is a great one. Everyone needs social media managers, and it's such a tough skill. They don't Social media managers do not get nearly enough credit for
Mm,
the tough work that goes into that and building a campaign and building a strategy. And we've
mm,
seen it recently been done really well by Fall Guys and by Among Us. Among Us didn't have a social account for a while, but once they created one, you can see that they've hired a social media voice that's just really on top of what the community wants. Same with Fall Guys. Fall Guys really extended its life and popularity through memes and through social media work in an incredible way. And so there's a ton of like esports opportunity in social media, in content creation, in graphic design, video editing, audio editing, and writing. The actual journalistic side is a much smaller part, but everything that goes on behind the scenes. You talk about production, you talk about uh, really just the content machines that all these esports organizations have become. If your goal, like a lot of people's in esports, is to work for an esports organization, content creation and the skills around it are probably where I would say is the biggest thing. And it's where we're going with these. They're becoming content houses. The ones that like FaZe Clan has always been that, of course, but even ones that were more competitive focused, primarily like a Cloud9, for example, are still ramping up their content, and that's not going away. Like one great example of this is NV Gaming's new CEO, Adam Reimer. So NV Gaming's been around for a long time, competitive success, COD League champions,
mhm.
and then Hastro, their longtime CEO, moves over to chief gaming officer to focus on, hey, I'm going to build these competitive teams. We're going to bring in a new CEO, Adam Reimer, and he comes from this media background. And it was a great moment of just like, hey, this is where esports organizations are headed in some way. Like they're always going to be content and gaming, and the content's so important that Hastro is going to move over to chief gaming officer and bring in a CEO whose background is in content, because that's just going to take such a crucial role, even as
Right.
they have really successful esports teams as well.
Gosh, well said, Mitch, and so true. And I love that you break it down so well. Like, hey, this is where the direction is going, and look where it's pivoting. And be able to see those dots to being connected is so key and integral. So that way, it really opens the eyes for more people that want to be in the space, and it opens those opportunities for them to enter it. And like you said, content creating. Well, you don't necessarily have to be the competitive gamer, if you will, that is going to be in a team. There's multiple ways to be part of a team. You can be the content creator of that team. You can essentially, obtain the social media, rank and roles to promote the team, which again, it all, adds to the influences of being part of the esports industry. Very neat, very neat. And so you're from what I hear, you're constantly looking for those trends and trying to be very informative to the community so that others can essentially follow. So that's really neat what you're doing. The power of, honestly, journalism, right? It's the power of writing, interviewing, seeking out answers, and like you said, accountability is key.
It's one of the reasons why I love journalism, and I recommend
Yeah.
it to students as a there's I might do journalism my entire life, I might not, but it is one uh it's an avenue coming right out of school where you immediately get to talk to the people in charge of this. And so you get to learn so much about this industry,
Yeah.
and journalism, you really need it, or the industry really needs it. And so 6 months after I came out of school, I was at Sport Techie, which was like my first big break. And the editor there, who's fantastic, shout out to Diamond, really helped me. Now he works for The Athletic. He connected me with Andy Miller, at NRG, the CEO of NRG. And that was one of the first conversations where I was like, oh, wow, I'm 6 months out of school and I'm talking to the CEO of one of the 10 largest esports organizations in the Western world. And
Wow.
uh, that's the kind of things, like I've talked to Adam Reimer a couple times now, and journalism really allows you to have these conversations and be on top of trends. And then if you don't want to, nothing's permanent, especially in this corporate world we live in now, you can do a lot of different things. And so I find journalism is a great first thing for people to do, because it throws your feet to the fire. You really have to understand these trends. You have to produce content around these trends, and you get to talk to all the people who are really in charge of important things. And then if you want to break out and go do something else afterwards, you have that ability, and you have a massive black book of different people you've talked to, which is great too.
That's really smart, and you even how to strategize to building your network. It's so true. Just getting yourself out there. And again, in what you're seeing today with the collegiate space specifically, with esports becoming such a force, if you will, to essentially bring in more academic programming, will only solidify what it looks like once they go into post. Now, what is it that you would recommend for those aspiring writers or people that are dabbling into the space and maybe a little bit hesitant to just fully jump in 2 feet? You're processing, I can tell.
Uh, I want to
What
have a
would you tell
ringing
like young Mitch?
endorsement. I want to have a ringing endorsement for esports, but the truth is, it's not a very stable career, and it's complicated, and it's something that if you're passionate about, you could find ways to make it work. Uh, but I'm not gonna sit here and be like, yeah, it's a lot of stability, it's a lot of,
Right.
uh, it's stressful, especially as a freelancer, to stack together all these different contracts to make sure you can pay your bills.
Right.
Uh, Day in and day out. Luckily, I'm at a place where my quotas allow me to do that and have a consistent like paycheck that I can then pull other articles on top of. But that wasn't entirely easy. What I think I would recommend to somebody who's interested in it is, don't jump fully in if you don't entirely understand what you want to do. Try and dabble, try and do what you can. And then when you see the opportunity, when you feel like, hey, this is it, go for it.
Mm.
But don't just quit your job and be like, okay, now I'm gonna go work at esports and figure out what that means.
Right.
Very
Gosh.
complicated, and be on top of trends. Like you mentioned, there's um when I came out of school, I actually wanted to be a Rocket League shoutcaster. That was like the thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I tried that for a little while. Nothing happened. And so I started doing these other things and just sort of be flexible, be aware of where you can go. But have a kind of an idea of what you want this to look like, because it isn't entirely stable, and you have to go into it knowing that, hey, the first 6 months, if I'm doing freelance writing, what I know,
Right.
it's gonna be tough. It is gonna be just trying to build connections and trying to get articles published and trying to work out the kinks in my own writing as well.
Gosh, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, full transparency, because you're right. It is a step in the direction of, okay, will I have the drive when I don't feel like I have the drive? And can I be resilient enough to keep at it, right? And for those, institutions that are starting to look into the space more so, the collegiate space is such a great way to test
Yeah.
and to even fail too, to say, hey, this is not something I'm either going to want to pursue for a long term or long haul, but at least I get to know that now before I get out and then have to figure out, those, discoveries, afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that, because like you said, pursuing your passions, it's what it's really all about in the end. I think people want to be happy and what it is that they do, whether it's with their degree or just a skill and talent outside. But really neat. Now, Mitch, I mean, if you could, you mentioned how you essentially, kind of journey mapped a little bit how it's really unconventional style, right? It's like, hey, I got here, worked over there, connected over here.
Yeah.
um, explain a little bit of those emotions and what was going on in your mind when you're like, okay, here I am just dabbling it, and parents probably think I'm just nuts.
They,
um,
they thought I was crazy. They wanted me to get a job at Best Buy during the holiday season right after graduating. And I was like, no, I just got a degree. I promise. I promise this is gonna break. But at the time, writing the stories was great, but I wasn't really making any money. That was right when I started at Sport Techie, and uh, I'll bet I could talk about the wages. But the wages, I wasn't making a living wage. I was living with my parents after graduating,
right, right.
and so there was a little bit of like hesitation there. And then as things started to progress a little bit, it was actually the moment my mom became on board was when Red Bull, it was for a US Open snowboarding event. And because I was writing
Okay.
for Sport Techie, they were like, hey, we're gonna fly you out. And Red Bull flew me out to cover the event. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, you're getting flown out to an event. And I was like, I still wasn't making shit money. Sorry, I gotta stop doing that.
It's
The
okay.
journalism in me.
Yeah.
But uh it was a kind of like okay, he's doing something here. There's some importance in this. And she also didn't understand esports and gaming. She didn't understand how big it was going to be. And then that, 2017 rolls into 2018. Fortnite comes out. Everybody hears about this. I'm covering this. I'm working for a Fortnite specific website. They started to pay my bills a little bit better. She's like, oh, this is bigger than I realized. And I knew it was bigger, but it's hard to explain exactly how big. And then now they're very proud of me and very supportive. But it's tough when you say, "Hey, I'm coming out of
Yeah.
school. I got my degree in this thing," and then right after school, I was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna go broadcast. I'm gonna go print. I'm gonna go freelance." And they were like, "Whoa." Uh, so it had to be a little bit of confidence, but I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, be like, "Yeah, I was fully confident the whole time." It was a
Yeah.
jump, and it was like, okay, let's try and make this happen. And then I gave myself an out deadline, which helped, so it wasn't just like
Right, right.
fighting against it. It was like, okay, at this point I'm going to go to this backup plan, the thing I actually got my degree in. And now I use all those broadcasting skills. It kind of came full circle in all the podcasts I use. So all the different time I spent doing broadcasting and audio editing and video editing, now I use that for podcasting, and it also helped my writing as well. So it's like all these different skills kind of
Right.
build into something. um but yeah, it was that first year was a little bit of a, okay, we good here. Yeah,
That's
it
right.
turned out all right.
Gosh, you unpack so much for us right there. It's so true, right? It's like parents won't know that it's real until either you get a job or they make a connection of an association that they recognize, right?
Right. Yeah. They
Oh
they saw
gosh.
Ninja. Ninja really did it broke that mainstream in a way that no other gamer had ever done. And they were like, wait, he's making how much money? Wait, Epic Games is, wait, what? How much money is in this? And that was, Ninja he gets a lot of flack, but he really broke down doors. A
Yep.
lot of what's happened now especially in the branding and advertising marketing world,
Right.
he was the leader there. Like he made moves that nobody else had ever made before, and he opened up doors for a ton of other streamers that were previously closed.
Right. Again, yeah, being able to see those dots and trend set a bit there helps widen the community, or at least bring in a community to begin with. And so you mentioned the skill sets that you took with you from your college days over, even after you said, hey, you know what, I've got to ditch this because I'm going to pursue what it is I want to do. And you gave yourself a deadline, or a soft deadline of some sort,
Soft
which,
deadline, yeah.
yeah, which makes total sense, right? It's like, okay, I've got to be real because this is the real world.
Yeah.
I'm no longer under the campus confines now. This is, sink or swim moments here. Um, Being able to take those skill sets, what is it that, you started connecting more dots as you were in it, in pursuing esports? Was it, I had to essentially tap into that, or you were into that space and then all of a sudden all of these learnings kind of came into play?
Yeah, it was a ton of research. It was a ton of like what's the there's a graph of the Dunning-Kruger complex, I think, is what it's called, but it's a graph of how well someone's knowledge of something and over time, and how well they think they understand something. And at the very beginning, you learn about something and you're like, oh, I understand all this stuff. And then you fall off a cliff and you realize how little of it you actually understand till it craters over time. And then you actually start becoming like being confident in your knowledge of something. And I'm somewhere
Right.
around like coming out of the
The cusp
crater.
of that, yeah.
Yeah. And uh it was very humbling, because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, now I'm starting to talk to people and they're talking about StarCraft and these different moments of StarCraft. And that was not something I ever followed. I had Hearthstone and Rocket League. And then people start bringing up Quake, and people start bringing up the Korean Esports Association, its founding. People start bringing up the early days of Major League Gaming. And I'm like, wow, I need to learn about all of this stuff. I need
Yeah.
to understand about how this stuff plays together. I need to know about who won every single League of Legends Worlds, because if a League of Legends fan brings it up, or or somebody asks about it, you need to know about Faker's Dynasty, about the rivalry between SKT and Samsung Galaxy, and how that's led to today. Uh, and so it's a massive industry, and esports reporters are generally asked to know a bit about everything, to be able to talk about Smash Bros, to be able to talk about the five gods of Smash Bros, or the four gods and the God Killer of Smash Bros. Um, and it's very just a complex industry where most sports journalists cover one sport, maybe two.
Right.
And that's their focus. It's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, whatever you want to do. And you're just going to know about that. And in esports, it's like you need to know about 15 different titles and the history behind them, as well as all these different esports organizations, which was they're competing in. Oh, and then also new titles are being created. So now, hey, learn about Valorant. You got to know about Valorant. You got to know about what Riot Games' new fighting game when that comes out. Where everyone's going to need to learn about that. Battle royales, Among Us. Like, you need to really be on top of everything in the gaming world. And it's easier said than done, for sure. And that first
Yeah.
coming out of it, when you want to make this a career, it's like, oh, it's a passion. I know about the things I know about. And when you make this a career and people ask you to be an authoritative voice on this, it's like, oh, I don't know anything about what I need to know about here.
And I love that you shared that, Mitch, because again, you made a correlation tie into, traditional sports, right? And yeah, I mean, it's not to say that it's not complex either, but it's one of those where, okay, you're really talking about one sport.
Mm-hmm.
And in esports, you're bringing in so many multi-layered facets from other sports to actually help bring in the context of what it is that you're talking about in this particular game title. And then understanding the history. I mean, I took away that immediately. It's so true. There's so much history in writing, all thanks to our journalist friends out there around the world. And not only understanding just like what the publishers are doing, but now you get to go a further deeper dive into the player scope, right? Now we have that platform. Now we get to see and look back at archives and actually see, hey, how did they do it in their humble beginnings or in that evolution process that we all want to learn about so that we can build upon that. And that's, yeah, I commend you for the work that you do, because I mean, you're really breaking it down into this micro macro scope that I'm seeing. And for those that are out there that are looking to pursue journalism, man, hats to you for entering the space. And you know, it's definitely a dynamic one. It sounds like it's going to keep you on your feet. There's probably never a dull moment in the space.
No, that's one of the other things that really attracted me to esports, is that sports are consistent. They've been around for a very long period of time. It's like things happen. I mean, this year, notwithstanding, this year was crazy, but it generally, the sports world follows a similar cadence, and it's like, okay, then this happens, then this happens. This guy gets traded. Great.
Right.
They win the championship. We'll do it again next year. Esports is just, you think about where this industry was in 2017, 2018, where they're, hey, we're going to create the Overwatch League. It's this franchise league. It's geo-localized. It's going to be crazy. And then 2 years later, their MVP leaves to go play a brand new game from their main publisher. It'd be like the NFL creating a new sport and then having Patrick Mahomes retire to go play the new, like, or having like LeBron retire. It's just comparison makes no sense whatsoever because of how unique and fast changing esports is, which means that as you cover it, you have so many things to write about. You look at what people in sports cover, and there's a lot of people in sports doing an amazing job, but there's a lot of competition for all the biggest stories too. And most people know LeBron's story. Most people know Kevin Durant's story. They end up starting to write about these really unique stories for like the 10th or 11th person on the bench. But there's a bunch of people in esports who are really important, whose stories just haven't been told at all. And
gosh, good point.
That to me is really cool. And it's an opportunity. People like The Score do a great job of this. They create a 20-minute documentary on a player, and that person's story had probably never been told in that format ever before. And I really respect them over there for that, because it takes so much research, and they're really pushing the industry forward. They're creating this catalog of all the, hey, this person matters, and here's why, here's what they did, and you could follow their achievements. So yeah, good people over there. And there's a lot of people in esports creating that type of content that's just like, wow, I never thought about that. I never heard about that. And it's pretty rare in the sports world for that.
Gosh, that's so true. Mitch, you bring up so many good points that even I'm processing them all. And exactly. Even just like you said, it cracked me up, the comparisons, right? It's almost like, it's like no other. It's almost like we want to force those comparisons, but just have to be in the space to understand.
And what I love about it too is that the absurdity of it is great for the mainstream publications, because you get and that's why a baseline knowledge of sports is really good if you do want to be a journalist, or if you want to be in esports. Those two worlds are getting closer and closer together, and understanding how things happen in the sports world, and then how that's playing into esports is really important, especially when you want to make comparisons for a mainstream audience. So for one example, I've been in Adweek's print edition once. The only time esports has ever been in there, but we got it once, and it was about Nike and the LPL, and about really short player careers. And one of the big reasons for short player careers is because the meta changes. And so one of the ways I highlighted, hey, this is how a meta is, because when you have 700 words hard capped to be on a page of a news or on a magazine, you don't have a ton of time to explain the complexities of metas. So the comparison I used was like, imagine if the NBA made James Harden 2 inches taller in the offseason to try and make more balance or something like that. And where it's like these incremental small changes that completely change how the game is played. And that was sort of the comparison I used. I think it helps to have those types of comparisons, especially when publishing in a publication, because it's what their audiences look for. It's what their editors are looking for. You need to be able to explain to them first. If they don't understand it, they're not going to publish your piece.
That's a good point. So true. And again, to the common reader, right? It's like, okay, for those that are entering the space for the first time, And if they read something they're not going to get, most likely won't pick up the next article that comes
Right.
out. But it's always got to be broken down with some comparisons, and to be able to like understand that and to draw that's very difficult in itself. So I can imagine what that must look like as you're thinking, this one through and explaining it. Um, Very cool. I mean, Mitch, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear just how you unpack and how it is that you go about, pursuing a piece. Very inspirational. And again, it sounds like, for encouragement out there, it's to say, hey, if you want to dabble in it, this is the best time to do it. Go out there and read, right? Go out there and actually get yourself
Yeah.
immersed into some of the context that's already out there. What would you say? I mean, again, you've mentioned so many great organizations and gave shout outs. What's another like inspiration that has helped you, especially during those times that are very difficult or you're working late hours?
Yeah, no, that's it can be hard to draw that in from, especially this year has been I get a lot of my inspiration from events and from traveling to places and meeting people and like seeing headquarters and where they are, and it's been quite difficult in this year to draw inspiration from. You can see this room, it's not exactly the most inspiration filled environment out there. Probably could have some art on the walls, but like it's that, and so it's been having to draw my inspiration from external sources, and a lot of that is consuming content and being like, oh, this is what the score is putting out. This is what my friends are writing about. This is what launcher's covering, and just reading things that even though it's not something you'd write about, helps to build inspiration. But it's not always easy. Sometimes you just have to just put something out there, and then it's probably hopefully better than the what you think it is, and hopefully you could just put something out. There's part of the journalistic world right now in this age of digital content is putting things out there, and just
Right.
having to, oh, we're gonna do 4 articles a day, 5 articles a day. You should see what Adam Fitch was doing at Esports Insider. That man was churning out content like nobody's business. He deserves way more recognition for all the cool work he did.
Very cool.
uh, and that's some, is it always going to be just this beautiful thing? Not always, but you have to just trust your facts. You have to put it out, um, make a call, and then own up to it. If you get anything wrong, you're going to get things
Mm.
wrong. Try not to, but
Right, right.
sometimes you'll get not usually facts, but sometimes you might miscategorize something, and somebody will reach
Oh,
out to you and be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, I know about this thing, this isn't really right, and here's why. And you have to be open to that and open to those critiques,
Right.
because it's the only way you learn to get better. So everything's a learning process. But yeah, just trying to make sure you're accurate, and drawing inspiration from wherever it can, you can find it. And I think offices and just consuming content, and even playing games, and playing all the different titles, and just trying to understand it a little bit will help you write about it as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And I think that's sort of like the beauty of it all too, right? It's to say, hey, in traditional sports, yes, you get to write about, coverage from all these different types of sport games, but you may not ever touch it, right? You may not ever play it.
Yeah.
And for esports, on the other hand, you have that chance right then and there to actually kind of plug in and actually kind of dig a little bit deeper in that psyche mode and to think, okay, I think I can see why people are entertained by this,
Yeah.
or I see the great value and potential where it's going to pivot next, and to be able to connect those dots and see where those trends are going to go into. I think that also adds another layer to how you can immerse yourself into more deep dive writing that becomes very compelling, right?
Yeah.
That people want to learn more about and just go, wow, he actually thinks the way I think. Or I didn't see that before and I want to know more.
Yeah.
Which is really neat that you put yourself in that driver's seat as much as possible, which again, it's another added value component to it. Very cool. So Mitch, share with me, I mean, a little bit more about, if you could, yes, you shared with me the evolution of it. Now here you are writing. What new great things are you looking forward to as we are ending this year and looking into the new year?
Traveling to events.
Traveling.
so
For sure.
badly. Uh,
Going back to normal.
yes, doing a podcast with other people in the same room as me, that would be great. Uh,
Right.
yeah, there's, but beyond that, uh, there's quite a few things in esports to be excited for, like the creation of the Valorant esports ecosystem. We have the first Strike tournament coming up, the first Riot Games
Right.
Valorant esports. What are they going to franchise? Probably. When does that look like? How does that look? We have the home stance and the home series from the Overwatch and Call of Duty leagues coming up this next year. I was calling 2020 the grand esports experiment for Activision Blizzard, see if they could consistently sell out arenas around the country for CDL and for around the world for Overwatch League. And we didn't get to really see that. We saw a couple of them. And so I'm really excited to see how those go and to see how smaller cities that have never hosted an esports event before, not small in the grand scheme of things, but most esports events are LA, Boston, occasionally New York, and that's about it. And how does a place like Vancouver sell out an arena? How does I think Minneapolis did hold one, but that's kind of the kind of stuff I'm looking for, just to see how esports infrastructure evolves. I'm also really excited about the collegiate esports space. Ton of varsity programs being created, a ton more infrastructure going into collegiate esports. The Just this last week, there was a Maui Invitational, which was one of the cooler collegiate events I've ever seen. With it's so Maui Invitational is a college basketball tournament, and then they held a college Rocket League tournament in the run up to it, and the viewership was really high, like 50-60,000 concurrent viewers for the semifinals, which is really, really high for a collegiate esports event. It's pretty solid for just a random, like, the Grid Rocket League event. And so that's the kind of thing I'm really excited for that space. I'm excited to see how mobile gaming goes. It's like, take your pick in esports. There's
true.
15 trends happening all at once, and that's why it's an industry that's a lot of fun to be in, because it's like everything's changing, and if you have ideas about it, you could probably get people to listen to them because they're like, oh, that could be new, that could be interesting. So just really try to think about the space critically and recognizing that, hey, this is an industry that has a lot of untapped places, and you just have to try and figure out what those look like and what you can do to help be additive to this industry, because it's going to grow. And even if it goes through some corrections, and who knows, but 10 years from now esports is going to be bigger than it is today, and 10 years from that it's going to be bigger than it was 10 years ago. And I don't there's nobody in the world that disagrees with that, because of just how the proliferation of video games. And so it's a fun space to be in. It's an unstable space to be in, but that's what makes it fun sometimes.
There you go. And like you said, though, there's so many trends going on at the same time. When you said take your pick, you're right. And then it sounds like, I mean, just based off what I'm hearing too, Mitch, it's like you dabbled in every single section here, just so that you can get a full embodiment understanding of, okay, this is how I can essentially make those call outs to these trends that are looking into this direction, or make these very bold predictions that are essentially going to come into fruition. It's just a matter of time. So amazing, honestly. Now, Mitch, we're almost at that time, and this is the part where I do ask for every guest speaker to leave us with some words of wisdom. And I know you shared a ton, but here I go, putting you in the spot.
All right. You want me to be wise now? I'm not
you have to put on your wise cap on.
This is now wisdom's hard. Okay. What they say, brevity is the soul of wit, right? So it's don't just do esports, figure out what you want to do in esports. That's the every time you talk to anybody in an esports organization or Riot or Blizzard, you go in there to a job interview and are like, hey, I love League of Legends. They're gonna, if that's why you want the job, it's not happening. Everyone in those offices loves it. Like, it's not enough. So esports is going to be the overall, but you should figure out what specifically you can do within esports. It's a massive industry, a growing industry. If you specialize, get a broad experience, but now my brevity is completely out the window. But basically figure out your role within esports, and then that'll become more clear. So just figure out how you want to jump into this, and then keep yourself open to flexibility as it goes on. But just know that just a passion for esports and just enjoying watching esports games isn't enough. You need to do something different. You need to be unique. You need to have an additive, an offering. Same goes for streaming. I know a lot of my friends are just are becoming streamers, and I think a lot of people as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like going live on Twitch is a great, valuable experience, but you have to do something unique. And the advice I've given them, for what it's worth, is just y'all should create content. That's, create YouTube videos, create TikTok. You can't just go live and shut off your stream and call it good. So do everything that goes around that. Focus on the production aspects, focus on the content aspects, focus on the social media, building an audience curation. And that's all going to go a long way. So just, try and figure out what skills you can develop while you're in this space.
Love it, man. Love it. That's so well said. And again, for those that are listening, start dabbling, right?
Yeah.
If you want to write, writers at the end of the day, they write. So they just do it, honestly. And what better time than now, more than ever, right? To uncover what talent you have out there or gift that you can present and share, and that can contribute to something that you like, and, possibly find out that you love it.
Your first article is going to suck, by the way. There's my wisdom.
There you go.
All the first things you do suck. It's fine. It's okay. Fine. You just have to get them out. You have to do it. They're going to suck, and that's okay.
See, I love that because, again, everybody's going to fail at one point, right? We're not going to have, this perfect article, and, we'll overly stress and consume ourselves.
Here's my story from that time. My first article I did for $5 was the most expensive decks in Hearthstone history, and I took all this time writing all these giant paragraphs about what makes this deck cool and who used it. The top comment on Reddit was TLDR, here are the 5 decks and their dust cost. That's it. The comment had more upvotes than the post itself. Done. And that was it. It was like I spent hours doing this.
Oh man.
And the writing was bad, which is why they didn't read it. And so that's it. I spent too much time doing something that wasn't needed, and then they boiled it down to that. And so it's a learning experience. But it was like 6 hours of work for $5, and then a snappy Reddit comment. It's like, it sucked, but it got better.
Yeah. Well, you took the feedback that was extremely valuable, and you carry that with you. But my goodness, thank you for sharing that experience with us too. All right. Excellent. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And Mitch, Reams, everybody, thank you again. And we'll have to have you on later down the road. And just wishing everybody to be safe. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye, bro.